Okay, hi everyone, welcome back. If you're new, I'm Yaron. I normally talk about things that I read, consume, or see and kind of try to relate them to technology. And for today, I had maybe an interesting topic, namely Murakami's Pinball. There you go, read it, 1973. The reason I picked up the book is very simple, namely I wanted to collect all the works of Murakami. I think I'm missing like 5 works and all of them are non-fictional. And if you don't know Murakami, Murakami is, I think, the best-selling author of Japanese fiction. He's a contemporary writer, but I'm not quite sure whether he still writes. And the beauty in his work is that it's very simple. So it's very simple for us to read his work and understand the story, because the story revolves around very average characters with average lives and with a mentality that kind of borders on depression. And so maybe you can relate to these characters. So I feel like that's also kind of the appeal of why people like to read Murakami. And I thought about all the characters that he has in the book, and now specifically Pinball. They are all alienated. And maybe I need to explain in short what Pinball is all about. And Pinball essentially follows an unnamed narrator who at the beginning mourns the death of his lover, simultaneously lives with 2 twins, has a translation startup running, and he has a very affectionate love with Pinball, specifically with the Free Spaceship Machine by Gilbert and Sands. I think that was the company called who produced these pinballs. And you kind of see that he has a very intimate relationship in the way that we might have with a friend. For instance, dialogues, they are very short for the characters in the whole story. So they're also not personal, or there are a lot of Easter eggs written in these dialogues, but they're not very clear. And for us, for the reader, it's kind of like you need to really look into what he's saying and understand all the references to understand what he's saying. For instance, when he goes to a pinball machine, which he finds after a while, he has an enlightenment in the way that 1, he missed the machine because he was a good player. 2, he didn't play the machine, to be fair, which still I don't understand that. And 3, he has an internal monologue of the machine. But the machine, the pinball machine, suddenly appears more human to us than all the characters in the book. And after reading the book and making a lot of annotations, I kind of realized the following, namely that the alienation of ourselves from society might be happening, 1, either through overconsumption of essentially everything. It goes for social media, goes maybe for music, goes for things that do not require us to reflect on what we did, and 2, specifically through AI. Because we tend to talk a lot about AI, might as well do that now. I have prepared 3 pages of handwritten notes because I remember what I'm writing when it's on paper. So I explained to you the writing style of Murakami and how the alienation becomes very clear in his novels. The unnamed narrator has, again, kind of depression. I feel like with the rise of all the crises in the world, we all tend to be a bit more depressive, and that makes the process of alienation faster. I'm just going through my notes and realizing I have told you essentially almost everything. Maybe that's an interesting thing that I did notice. I didn't talk about that yet. So, as I have said, unnamed narrators, average lives, but what they also have is they're kind of aimless, but not in a bad way. Because when we tend to think about people being aimless, we tend to think or associate them with negative traits. Lazy, doesn't know what they want to do, not contributing to society, which is not true, because I feel like people need to find themselves. A lot of the things that you tend to think will work out will not work out. That's why I dropped out of uni, by the way. So being aimless gives you the freedom to reflect on your life and notice the little things. Because telling you that Murakami's work is easy to read is a bit surprising if you don't know that a lot of the internal thoughts of a character is being displaced by them noticing their life and essentially what they are being encountered with. So, for instance, the character finds the pinball machine and starts to describe it, in 2 pages about every little detail that he can find and how this reminds him of this anecdote and that anecdote. So a lot of reflecting is being done, and I think you can only do that when, in a sense, you don't have a direct direction. And you might argue that, hey Yara, you're only saying that because you're currently in that phase, which is true, right? Because I'm also trying to find what I want to do. And it's kind of hard because the more you think about it, the more hopeless you tend to feel, because there's just so much that you could be doing. Yeah, for the next point, paper again, it's all about the thought process, right? So my main argument maybe is a bit unclear by now, but my main argument is that you are being alienated from society by humanizing machines. I should have made that clear. That is the main argument. And when a narrator, or like when this narrator in Pinball starts to develop kind of like an intimate relationship with a pinball machine in which only he can feel himself being true when using the pinball machine, when playing pinball, when he can think about his past experiences only in regards to his pinball machine, then you might be thinking, okay, something might be wrong with this guy. Because at the very end of the book, if you want to read it, sorry, it will be spoiler, he is alone. Like at the very end, he starts being alone. He does not live with the twins anymore. And his friends that are mentioned in the book, they have moved out of the city, out of Tokyo. And I feel like the moment you start being alone from society by your own will is when alienation starts really to kick in, right? And maybe there's a beauty in that because you start to think, and having trust in your thinking about the things that you do might let you reflect on your life. There's also a very interesting essay by Ralph Emerson. He's known for his writing in the American Renaissance, and he's essentially telling you that as an individual who comes into this world, you have a native genius, and that native genius can only be, for instance, curated and nourished when you alienate yourself from society, because society brings you into structures and into kind of like ways to develop yourself that are not necessarily inherent to your native genius. And so alienation in this kind of form is a good thing. And I think that was only previously possible without the dominant technologies that we currently have. Because when you alienate yourself from society, right, when you start feeling loneliness, when you start not going out anymore, when you start losing interest in meeting anybody, I think you're not sitting there with your thoughts and think about who you are and what you can do. You're not like the characters in Murakami's novel, probably. I hope you are. Right? Because then a lot of introspection gives way to execution and agency, in my opinion. But I think a lot of us tend to fall into the overconsumption of media. And that is, at the very end, what we'll be doing. And instead of humanizing a pinball machine, we are humanizing AI. And we're humanizing characters based on large language models. And we are humanizing and romanticizing models that obviously will listen to us 24/7. When we pay $20 a month, and they will stay with us because they're always available. And that kind of alienation, where you burn down the bridges to people that you love and care about, that's where, your alienation is in no form a rehabilitation, but you're confining yourself to an everyday dopamine influx, and you're not creating. And neither are you reflecting. And for most part, you are wasting your time. Your life is essentially going by every day without you having produced anything. And maybe that is the whole point why I like Murakami's work so much. Because he is showing you that there are real consequences when you start leaving society for the pure, essentially, how do I frame that? For the pure reason of wanting to be not alone with your thoughts, but alone with your entertainment. And maybe that is why, if you have the time, maybe read Pinball, 1973. It's not a long book. You will probably understand the character. And I'm not quite sure. I was quite sad with the ending. Maybe you will be as well. Because I think the ending, it's an open end, by the way. And the moment he gets lonely, I don't know, I felt like that's not how you should be living your life at the very end, right? So yeah, that's what I wanted to record for the day. Again, I hope you were able to maybe take something out of it. This was a more random kind of like video, and you will see that since I tried to structure it, but somehow I noticed that even in my presentation as well, I tend to like to speak freely. I don't like scripts. I don't think that scripting everything will result necessarily in a better way, and maybe people like that style. If not, sorry. And yeah, I think that's it. So if you liked the video, feel free to like and subscribe. And as always, feel free to comment. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn. I will try to answer. And that's it, I think, for today. See you until next time.